Time to spotlight Apple's new $500 billion U.S. investment plan. Joining us now to discuss it is James Demmert, founder and chief investment officer at Main Street Research. James, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Good to see you too, Caroline.
All right, so as part of this $500 billion investment plan, Apple's creating a factory in Texas for AI servers, which is slated to begin operations in 2026. In addition to that, Apple said it will hire some 20,000 new employees across the U.S. It's certainly enough to help Apple buck today's downtrend, but how notable of a move is this for Apple?
Yeah, I think there's a couple great takeaways here, Caroline, for investors. It's a positive for Apple. Most importantly, I think one of the takeaways is that the tariff threats are really a negotiating tool. Cook and Trump met last week, and they come out of that this week with a pretty significant investment in the U.S., bigger than the first administration for Trump. So I think that's important, and it tells us that very important takeaway as well, that Apple is committed to AI and that we're in the early stages of AI, and also committed to made in the U.S. And those are all positives for Apple.
Do you think Apple was committed to that before President Trump took office again, though? How much of this do you think actually has to do with the meeting that they had, and how much of it would have made sense regardless of who was president?
I'd say the meeting put maybe a 15% on what they were going to do anyway. So I think, yes, okay. A lot of this was already baked in the oven. I think they put some icing on it after that meeting. And this is all about, trying to, play well in the sandbox with these potential very devastating tariffs that Apple could be subject to. And I think this is going to help them. Obviously, they're going to take a lot of this money and invest in Houston and an AI factory, which we think is extremely important. And they also have that relationship with TSM, which we can also talk about as well.
Well, Apple, though, still assembles the majority of its devices in China. So do you think this investment and these new employees being hired here in the U.S. actually creates a carve-out for Apple when it comes to those China tariffs?
We do, and now it's going to take time, but I think the promise and the commitment of 4 years and $500 billion is going to give them a little bit of leeway. If there's any gray area, it's going to go to their favor. But Apple needs to diversify away from that China centricism because it's never good to have all your production in one place. So they need to diversify, and they've been on that path. This is going to obviously make that even better.
Yeah, we've been seeing them do that, diversifying into India as well. Do we know any more about where some of the rest of that $500 billion goes here in the U.S.?
Most of it's going to go to Houston. That's a big plant that they're making the AI server manufacturing, which is very important. Then they're going to go to Michigan and create the AI university, where they're going to be training, which is also good for U.S. employees, training them around AI. So these are great U.S., obviously centric investments, and they're significant and they're bigger. It was $350 billion in 2018, kicking it up to $500 billion, 20,000 jobs is significant. It's, I'm sure, good news for the Trump administration, but it really is good, I think, for Apple shareholders. At 33 times earnings, with a deep commitment to AI. Particularly through this new phone that's coming out, we think it's great for shares.
A bullish enough catalyst so that you'd be buying shares, 5% away from the highs right now, or you'd be waiting for a better entry point?
Well, there's, lower is always better, but I think here we have a weak tape today, as you mentioned, and the shares are up, and that means that shareholders, institutions like this news, and I think that one of the problems investors have with companies trading near highs is, I'll wait till it declines significantly. I think unless you have a market correction, I'd be a buyer here. I think the stock is well poised to continue to do well throughout the rest of the year and over the next few years, since we're early in the cycle. And they're going to really rely on Apple Intelligence to drive, that growth. And to us, that's going to be very powerful on the iPhone. And at 33 times earnings, we think the growth will exceed that multiple by a significant amount. So we would be buyers here. If you're a real tactician, we tend to be strategic. Maybe you buy some shares today, and then you wait till maybe a market correction and buy the rest of the shares.
What other investment opportunities could this open up? I mean, one would assume maybe potential real estate investments.
Well, that's always a possibility. I mean, we've got a lot of, you can invest through that, like a digital realty, which is a REIT. And I think that makes sense. That's a holding of ours, by the way, as disclosure. But yeah, I mean, we're going to be building more server farms. The real estate certainly could be that. I think, it bodes well in general, this deep commitment to AI, to not only the NVIDIAs, which of course reports on Wednesday, but also, those more tailored chip makers like Broadcom. So the semi business certainly will be a beneficiary. Potentially, companies like Digital Realty that lease space to the server farms. And of course, I think it's very important to think about the energy use, right? We're going to continue to use AI and EVs. One of our themes, very important for investors, is how do we sort of embrace this need for more energy? And you can do that through companies like Schneider Electric, which we own up today because of the German elections, or Constellation Energy, which really trying to get more energy to use for these all these applications that are coming our way. So we don't have enough energy. Another way to play it.
Okay, James, and just finally, do you think this paves the way for other announcement from some of Apple's competitors or other big tech firms in terms of more U.S. investments, more U.S. hires?
I do. I think this negotiating tool, as we call it, the threat of tariffs, is going to make a lot of people come to the table. Apple maybe being the first real significant one. I think you're going to see others follow. And our view has always been perhaps there won't be money tariffs at all in more negotiating. And this is a really good example of maybe we're on that trend now.
Okay, we will see. James Demmert, Main Street Research, thanks so much.